Going forward, now since we know as to what the consumers need, what consumers are demanding, what kind of behaviors are going to remain permanent, it's time to listen to SALONI NANGIA, President TECHNOPAK, as she holds forth on customers and the new reality. How can enterprises transform themselves to match the challenges of the coming few quarters? How can they match, how can they meet customer expectations? And how do they bridge the gap between brand promise and customer experience? So over to you, Saloni. Let's roll.
Good morning, everyone. I'm SALONI NANGIA. I work with a management consulting firm called TECHNOPAK. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Bhavesh and team, for inviting me here again. So I'm sharing our thoughts, TECHNOPAK's thoughts on what the impact of COVID has been on consumers and how we feel companies and brands could prepare for the change that's happening in our entire ecosystem, and what do we see as key trends in the short term as well as the long term. So yes, talking about the evolving consumer needs and what's really happened over the last 6 months, how businesses have transformed and how we think the realities of business are sort of sinking in, and what are the short and long-term impacts that we would see because of that. So yes, talking about how human being has evolved and how the digital landscape has evolved. So yes, when we talk about, so what we are entering into, which is the digital age, is as important as any of the eras that the human being has gone through. And this itself, when we talk about the COVID Uber digital, is something that has taken everyone by surprise. And it's really a rapid pace that we are going to see in the next few years. When we talk about how the market has evolved, so we as a consulting firm do keep a close watch on how the economy is evolving, what impact does it have on consumption as well as merchandise retail. So when we were looking at these numbers 6 months prior, that's when we were talking about these numbers in February, the consumption was about $800 billion in terms of merchandise retail. And India as a country would have looked at $1 trillion plus merchandise retail by 2022. There were talks about Indian economy becoming about $5 trillion by 2025. So yes, a year, give or take a year, we would have reached that. But what's happened over the last 6 months has sort of a medium-term lasting impact. And when we look at the numbers now, post-COVID, so yes, there was a little bit of impact in the financial year 2020 as well. So instead of but it was very minor because there was only about 30 to 45 days which came under impact if you look at mid-February onwards. So yes, we were close to about 800 billion consumption as far as merchandise retail went. But yes, there is going to be a steep drop. There has been a steep drop in H1 of 21 that would continue. We do think 2021 would remain impacted largely. But yes, there will be a growth coming back in 2022. And that's where we think we would reach the same numbers as we are in 2020. So about $800 billion of merchandise retail consumption in 22. And then we would see the original growth that we were looking at coming back in terms of growth rate. And so instead of 22, 23 for Indian merchandise retail being about $1 trillion, we think we'll achieve that now in 24, 25. And so yes, there is a pushback for about 18 to 24 months in the entire plans. We think hitting the $5 trillion economy mark would also be a couple of years ahead now. That is in case we do continue without almost absolutely unhindered from now onwards. But yes, it is an evolving situation. We really need to see it month by month and quarter by quarter. But when we look at retail channels, yes, there are different types of impacts that have happened across various retail channels. But as the economy sort of uh, limps back to normalcy over the next 6 to 9 to 12 months, we would see that all formats would continue to grow. So, be it modern retail, be it e-commerce, be it traditional retail, as planned or as envisaged earlier, all formats would continue to grow over the next 5 years. But what's very interesting and what has been accelerated by COVID is this new format, which is, I mean, in terms of in a couple of years, we'd be talking more about digitally enabled formats and non-digitally enabled formats. And that's the big transformation that we see happening over the next few months and years. Digital enablement of traditional retail, of modern retail, and of course, the core digital formats of e-commerce um, is something that is going to move ahead very rapidly. And we think in the next 5 years, about $200 to $240 billion worth of merchandise retail would happen through digitally enabled formats. And that's so while this is a trend that was in the making over the last few years, that's where retail would have reached, let's say, in the next decade. But the COVID situation has sort of helped this move ahead accelerate much faster. And we would see the impact within the next 5 years itself. And this has huge implications for all the businesses, especially all the consumer facing businesses. And we'll be talking about these trends in the next few slides. So, I'd just like to mention that, all the trends that we're going to talk about were in the process, were in the making, would have taken a longer time duration, but these trends have been accelerated by COVID, and so we would be, as businesses, facing them much sooner than, or we need to address them much sooner than what we would have planned earlier in our long-term goals. So disruption of traditional business models. This basically started with a lot of digital first or born digital companies that came into play. So over the last 10 years, we have steadily seen this disruption come in the traditional business models. But this has been absolutely accelerated with the COVID situation, with the last 6 months. And we've seen that e-commerce models, or be it delivery models, be it direct-to-consumer models, have really done well. And it's become imperative for all business models now to look at a D2C or a direct-to-consumer connect. This is something that was in the making, but now all the companies, all the consumer-facing businesses realize that it's absolutely imperative that they have a direct connect, and technology enables them to do that. What's also interesting is basically the WhatsApp and Messenger-based D2C models that have come up over the last 6 months. We all knew about them. We all knew that they would become a part of our business, but their adoption, as well as their successful implementation with the consumer, is something that's reinforced over the last 6 months. And we would see many more activities happening over WhatsApp or Messenger-based models. Again, talking about a similar trend, which is the entire B2C business is sort of converging in a digitally activated ecosystem. So while, yes, there were many companies who were already a part of e-commerce and the digital ecosystem, but the larger interface, so be it traditional retail, be it modern retail, it's absolutely imperative that they become a part of this ecosystem. And it is at all levels of interaction. So through the entire customer and consumer journey, so be it pre-sales, be it discovery, be it purchase or post-sales. It's sort of a fluid integration that needs to happen between digital as well as brick and mortar and traditional formats. And we've seen that. So the same consumer one is trying to reach through social media, through marketing, which could be AI or bots or other digital interfaces. There is some ATL activity, above the line activity still continuing, but below the line and trade shows have really been impacted. Um, and we see that taking a different form. We see that taking a digital form over the next few years. While yes, life would be back to normal, there would be activities which would be, which would be similar to what used to happen earlier. But we think digital would play a major role and really change the way we interact with the consumer. Same thing for discovery. So, be it marketplaces, the same product is available through various formats for the consumer, also on social media and getting influenced by social media. Purchase an absolute seamless and contactless purchase. So, be it through the digital formats or brick and mortar formats, there is an integration that we are looking at. And the same thing with post sales. So be it AI-enabled selling, upselling, or post-sale service, that's a trend that's here to stay and really sort of change the way we shop and the way we connect with our target consumer. The next trend, which is very the consumer has evolved 20 years ago, how it's evolved over the last decade, and how we think it's going to impact further. What we need to keep in mind is that while the consumer basket has been expanding, the incomes are not expanding at the same rate. So there is a very serious category collide that happens, which we really do not understand, that how one category could impact the other. The fact that a person is not buying new clothes could be because he or she is spending more on a mobile phone, or maybe more on OTT platform subscription. So basically, a category collide, which is very, very clear, is something that all brand marketeers and all companies really need to understand where the consumer is spending his or her monies. So when we look at pre-2000, there were a few categories that were a part of the consumption basket. So be it, naturally food and grocery has remained the largest share, clothing, footwear, consumer durables, but basic products. 10 years hence, we saw new entertainment options come in, more eating out come in, mobile phones became a key part of this expense, education became a key part of this expense. What in 2020 or 2019, 2020, there are club memberships, travel packages, beauty and spa, in terms of gaming, many more products have got added to the same basket. And that's where it's very important for us to understand that the same consumer basket is being, the same consumer wallet is being spread over many other categories. COVID has added new categories to our basket, also helped consumers realize that even less is more, and that has a direct impact on how consumers would shop in the next few years. So yes, while health and wellness is a key trend, immunity boosting foods, while yes, it's a short-term impact, but it could be something that consumers integrate as a part of their lifestyle for the future. Many things for personal care and household care, which are absolutely new, which have been added to the consumer basket. Many entertainment and leisure options, which consumers are spending much more on. So the basket is changing. We really need to understand fashion and apparel is one of the biggest sectors which has been impacted. Value is something that's going to be very important. There are a few other new categories which have come in which are very important. So, so yes, online education, more spends on healthcare, more spends on insurance. So we really need to keep in touch with how the consumer is, is evolving, where he or she is ready to spend, and see how we can add that to our product basket, or how we can add that to the service that we offer to the consumers. So while Indian consumers were always known for value for money, but yes, that's one trend which has really been accentuated. Also keeping in mind that the first 6 months of the COVID situation, consumers, still, there was a rush on food and grocery. There was um, uh, not really understanding how the situation is going to evolve. But as the reality sinks in, as one knows that the emphasis on value pleasing even more. Trading down is something that will be very important, and really all brands need to understand that consumers would be looking at a very, very well-defined value proposition, which brands should be able to communicate. Um, Else, consumers would not remain brand loyal or would be very happy trading down in terms of looking at as far as the basic requirements are met. The consumer wallets are going to remain under pressure. Even if things improve, there will be a certain psychological pressure that consumers would face. We don't think we will see a very large amount of revenge buying as some other countries might have seen. We think value would remain very, very important, and commanding a premium can become difficult for the brands. So it's very important that the brands focus on affordability and a very well defined value proposition, which is a part of the product and is also very, very well communicated to the consumer that there is a value for money proposition for them. Absolute focus on health. Yes, healthy lifestyle was something that was as an upcoming trend, but this has become the core of a consumer's lifestyle now. And we think this is a permanent trend. This is here to stay. And this will not, this might get diluted from this absolute focus at this moment, but it is a trend that would become a part of every consumer's life here onwards. And that's why brands would need to see what is it that sort of connotes health and a healthy lifestyle for a consumer. We think a positive for all food products and to a large extent clothing as well is natural, and focusing on natural because there's a direct connotation with health would be key. When we look at from a lifestyle perspective, at leisure, keeping in mind that consumers would be seeing work from anywhere or work from home as part of active lifestyle. Equipment which helps them maintain an active lifestyle, training classes or digital health programs, things which help them with holistic focus on. There will be a boost on healthcare because it's a subconscious requirement and need that all consumers will focus on. Insurance companies would see and are already seeing and would see an uptake. It's a good opportunity for brands to partner or co-promote with a health product, and a longer term impact as we see is a focus on sustainability and green that the companies should look at. It's something that it is a value add in terms of being able to communicate with their consumers that you have a focus on sustainability and green. It's not something that one is looking at from a short term, but a longer term impact that most companies should be focusing on. And for a large number of companies which focus on millennials and Generation Z, as their core consumer, there is a very clearly defined trend in terms of casualization and athleisure as millennials adopt work from anywhere concept and also look at a healthy lifestyle concept. There will be extreme price sensitivity, and brands and companies would need to plan for that in terms of the product mix or new ranges that they develop in the future. We think this price sensitivity would remain for a couple of years, and it's important that brands understand that. The gig economy trend would get further accentuated. So be it pay as you go or rentals or upcycle and trade down. Sharing is something which is already a part of the millennials lifestyle, but that would get even further accentuated. So any product which can be sort of uh, transformed into a rental over ownership, or could be looked at from a leasing perspective, or could be looked at from a subscription perspective, is something that companies can focus on. Plus, of course, any form of digital engagement, because digital is at the core of the millennials lifestyle, and any form of digital engagement will be central to the entire consumer journey as well as experience. So we did talk about this earlier, but yes, this is more focused when we look at the online and offline integration. This is going to be a game changer. While it's not going to have an immediate impact in the next 6 months, but as platforms get implemented, as more retailers sort of become a part of these platforms, we think the role of digitally enabled retail would increase substantially. This is not, while there is a lot of talk about this and in the current situation, we think it's a slow moving trend. It will take time before a successful integration takes place, but it is a trend which is here to stay, and it's something that we need to plan for in terms of integrating the traditional retail with e-commerce and enabling a direct to consumer link here. When we talk about e-commerce and when we talk about key growth drivers and game changers, they remain the same as they did in the pre-COVID era. So food and grocery being 65 to 70% of our total consumption basket, it is very important that food and grocery e-commerce models are worked out correctly, and that would be a multiplier effect as far as food and grocery, as far as e-commerce goes, and that will be the game changer. And so, be it an online-offline integration, be it a pure e-commerce food and grocery play, it's very important that these models are correctly implemented, and that would absolutely transform the digital landscape of the country. So what we're talking about is largely urban. So how does one integrate the Bharat consumer, and that's where vernacular and voice enabled UI for Bharat is very important. We have seen some implementation taking place, but a bigger change would come in only once these platforms are integrated. Of course, with 5G coming in, m-commerce would even get we will be accelerated even more. And yes, B2B platforms, they've taken off in the last year, or let's say 18 to 24 months, but we see much faster growth happening there, and a large part of revenue being generated from there. These we think are the 4 key enablers which will change the will change the e-commerce market in India as we stand. So when we look at, to sum up, when we look at all the trends, so yes, disruption of traditional business models, which started about 5 years ago, but a lot of the traditional businesses now need to adopt that very quickly. Converge is a digitally activated ecosystem where both traditional and modern retail get integrated with digital and with the consumer. And we would see a very, very rapid implementation of that. Evolving consumer basket and the category collide which comes with it, and brands need to be cognizant of the fact that they could be competing with an absolutely different category and not with another toothpaste or another apparel brand. Even more value for money. So yes, a lot of focus on being able to define and communicate value for the consumer. Absolute focus on health, So integrating healthy lifestyle in whichever way one can with our product and service. When we look at millennials and Generation Z, yes, we do need to understand that this impact might have a deeper impact, where the COVID situation might have a deeper impact, and really need to understand, where we should be evolving or changing our product for them. Online, offline integration, assisted commerce, and e-commerce models, which in food and grocery, or be it models for Bharat, which we think will be key growth drivers in the coming years. Thank you.